sont coupés.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending where you are in the world. Thank you very, very much for joining the Consumer Goods Forum Health and Wellness webinar today. Our focus on today's webinar is measurement and reporting. And you should all have received, hopefully, our annual survey, which we send each year to all of our member companies to understand where we are in terms of implementation of the health and wellness commitments and the health and wellness resolutions. So we want today's webinar to be open, interactive, give you all the possibilities to ask questions to a number of our speakers that we have on today's webinar, here with you to help you as we go through the measurement and reporting process. So let me just introduce a couple of people that we have. And really, as I mentioned, please do take the time today to ask them any questions that you may have. So we have a measurement and reporting working group, as with everything we do at CGF. It is a project that is run by our members for our members, and this is currently led by Petra of Nestle and Harmjan of Ahold, who co-lead a working group that we have, who have worked on putting together the survey and who are improving it year on year. We couldn't do this alone. We work with Deloitte as our partner on this project. They've been on board with us since the beginning, and we have Blake, who will be on today's webinar, who's going to walk us through the tool. So really 3 people who've used it, who report, who have expertise in this area, so don't hesitate in asking them questions. You'll notice that you're all on mute at the moment, and we will do this except for the speakers, just as we walk through today's webinar. We will really try to limit our speaking and give the time over to you at the end of the webinar. You will have a number of ways that you can ask questions. Either you can send an email directly to me at my email, which is s.bligh@theconsumergoodsforum.com. You also have the chat box on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And if anybody would like to speak at the end of the webinar, please raise your hand and we will unmute your phone line and let you ask directly your questions to today's speakers. So for the next 35 minutes, we will take you through the following agenda. So of course, why it's important, why are we doing this, why do we really need to measure and report. We are going to quickly go through the highlights from the 2015 report, just as context before we move into 2016 to see where we are, how we're doing, and what we need to improve and hopefully progress when we get our new results at the end of this year. We want to walk you through the survey. So go live to the survey, and if you have any questions, we'll just highlight some of the main points that you need to be looking out for as you're filling in this year's survey. You may be asking yourself a number of questions on specific sections, what's relevant to me, what's not relevant to me, and we'll bring you through that on today's webinar. What's new? We've added in a couple of new questions. Don't worry, we haven't made it too much longer, but just we will go through some of the new aspects in this year's survey. As always, to make it real, we want to make sure that it's pragmatic and doable. A number of our members are going to share their experience with measurement and reporting. And then finally, we are going to just finish off the webinar with an outlook on the 2016 report and have plenty of time left at the end of the agenda for your questions and answers. So to give the context, just a quick reminder on why we measure and why it is so important for the Consumer Goods Forum, and I will hand you over to Petra from Nestle. Petra.
Hi Sharon, and hi everybody. It's a great pleasure to basically have you joining and understanding and wanting to launch the next survey for the CGF. And of course, you know, we want to just make sure that we all have a good motivation in doing so. So why are we actually doing this as CGF, but also as individual companies? We basically want to make sure that we can use the information that is being captured to actually inspire and hence to tell the company stories. So this can be individual stories, but also collectively progress as an industry, which is of course much more powerful than trying to individually tell the company stories. Then also, secondly, we want to make sure that efforts really are made visible. Visible meaning that a lot of companies, we spend a lot of efforts in our health and wellness areas, and when we report it, it becomes actually something that we can show, that we can share, and we can do so internally to actually push our internal colleagues, as well as we can do that collectively with external stakeholders. So this is very, very valued actually as part of the continuous efforts and the transparent way of reporting. So we also want to make sure that we continuously share the positive things that we do as an industry, and the role eventually that industry really still can play on the global health and wellness agenda. That is not really very obvious in the current days when we're facing a lot of pressure, so it is even more important now to ensure that we tell our story strong and firm and in a very transparent manner. And to do so, we need to have as much data as possible to have actually a very meaningful story. The last thing is also that we learn. We do learn a lot from the report on year, and it shows how we are thriving over time. It helps us to identify new opportunities, eventually weaknesses where we need to accelerate, and hence it really helps us to set the agenda for the coming years. So with this, I would hand over to Harm-Jan to share with us a few main findings from the 2015 report.
Thank you, Petra, and thank everyone for joining. What I would like to do, I would like to take you through some highlights of the survey or some findings we had over the 2015 survey. And the first thing you see on the slide is that we had 78 companies participating or completing the survey, which is an increase compared to 2014. At the same time, with the Consumer Goods Forum having 400 members or around 400 members, this is still not even 25% of the total population. So we have a long way to go, and I think we can improve this number as well this year by completing more and having more companies complete the survey. But what we also see is that 78 companies is a good basis to have some conclusions and to have some solid conclusions as well on what we have done over the past years. So what we've seen is we have inclusion of all categories of the CGF members, which means that we can spot differences between companies but also similarities, which I think is good, because then also, coming back to Petra, we can learn from each other and we can help each other to improve. Another thing we see is members are making progress, and for example, last year 74% of companies have policies and programs in place for all the 3 health and wellness resolutions, which was 60% in 2014. And another thing where we are making good progress is that 90% of the companies are disclosing the policies to the public. And that was 75% in 2014. So we see that more and more companies are being transparent on the resolutions, which I think is great. Also for the stakeholders, we have to get more insight in what we do. Last year was the first time we had a clear measurement on our 4 commitments. And of course, we would like to continue that this year. And what we also see is that there is an increase in the members that are setting targets. And altogether, these results give us a lot of clarity on the implementation of what we do, but it also gives us some insights and challenges. And for example, more members are needed to join this effort and to contribute their expertise and innovation to really give a better insight in what we do as an industry. And a second challenge we see, and I'm not sure if there is a challenge or if that is just a fact, that the first 2 commitments, they are due for this year. So the making company policies public nutrition and product reformulation resolution is due, and the other resolution is the implementing employee health and wellness programs. And I think it's important also when completing the questionnaire to bear that in mind, that we really would like to show good progress and good results on these two resolutions, to show our stakeholders as well where we are doing. If we then look at the next slide, where we can see some highlights.
Harmjan, we're having just a little bit of trouble hearing you. If you could just speak a little bit louder, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, I will try to do that. What we see is that we last year we reached 1.9 billion people from health and wellness partnerships, and I think that's really an amazing number. And I'm sure that we were able to get them a little bit more aware and help them a little bit more in getting a healthier or getting a better life. We are working with partnerships, and I think it's a great number, it's a great contribution, and I hope we can keep that number up. Another thing you see is the reformulated products, which is over 84,000, which is nearly 4 times as which we had in 2014. But still, this is just a small part of the portfolio we are having as the consumer goods for foreign companies, because we have, of course, much more products we produce. So there we have some steps to take. And another number I would like to highlight is the 2.3 million employees, where we really help them being active, and they participated in some health and wellness programs. I think it's a great result as well. But all combined, these are very nice results, but we need to have more members to complete the survey to use the full potential of the CGF. And I really think we are capable of doing that. Blake will guide you through the survey in a minute. And I would like to encourage you to really complete it. If you have any questions, let us know. And Blake, I would like to hand over to you to take us through it. Thank you.
Thank you, Harmjan, and thank everyone for joining us for the webinar. Next slide. I just want to take a moment to introduce you to the survey. I don't know if everyone on the line is completely new to this process. Perhaps you've opened the survey and have some questions about how to navigate through it. Again, we'll take a few minutes just to demonstrate some of the functionality, some of the tools that are embedded in the survey that can help you to respond more easily. You see that for last year, the average time to complete was around 40 minutes, so we don't envision that this is an exhaustive process. Of course, if you don't have the data at your fingertips in order to populate the survey, there's some additional time that's necessary. But in terms of navigating through the survey, this is intended to be something that you can do fairly quickly. And we've tried to build as much functionality into the survey as possible to streamline the process for the respondents, depending on the type of company they are, depending on some of your answers. There's logic built in so that you don't have to go through and answer questions that aren't applicable to your company. We'll spend a few minutes going through the survey, and please do not hesitate to ask any questions as we're going through the survey or reaching out to me afterwards for further explanation. Next slide, please, Lasma. So I did want to introduce a couple of new questions or concepts that we've included in this year's survey. Again, we don't envision that these require significant additional level of effort to respond to, but just wanted to make you aware of them. If you participated last year or the year before, these things might be new to you. The first one is around implement or explain. Again, this is, in particular, we've added additional follow-on questions around the commitments for companies that aren't in the process of implementing against those commitments. We're trying to understand in more detail what your challenges are so that we can reach out to you and provide the support necessary so that you're able to start to take action. Around the regionalization strategy, there's really just an initial, there's two components to this, an initial question that identifies the region that each of the companies are headquartered at so that we can understand where the driving forces are around the health and wellness challenges for that region. In addition, we're in the process of developing a Spanish language version of the survey that you'll be able to complete online for those participants that are in Latin America. This is to support an effort on the part of CGF to really focus on health and wellness in the Latin American region for this year. Around healthy communities, we've added a couple of additional follow-on questions to the existing questions that really try to understand what actions you're taking to respond to global public health issues, what are the organizations that you're partnering with, what type of issues are you focused on. And so within the existing structure, there's a couple of additional questions that try to drill down on how you're engaging with communities around health and wellness issues. And then finally, on consumer information, we recognize that this is a quickly evolving space on how companies are getting information out to their stakeholders, and so we've added some additional questions to try to better understand how you're engaging with your consumers and trying to influence their behavior around health and wellness. At this point, we'd like to actually get into the survey, so Lasma, if you could turn over control to me, I'll open it up. Great, so everyone should have received a link to the survey, and when you click on that link, this will be the page that you'll see initially, and it gives the background information that perhaps you've already seen. Why does your company need to complete the questionnaire, how the questionnaire is set up, and has some general background information around what the survey is trying to accomplish. So we mentioned before that there's a tiered approach to implementation, and so when we're looking at the resolutions and the commitments, we're trying to understand if you've taken action to develop programs, are there targets associated with those programs? Is there a policy that supports your overall efforts? And do you have KPIs that you use to measure progress that we can roll up as an organization to try to communicate with some of the larger stakeholders that are the focus of CGF's efforts in this space? And so we're looking at a tiered approach and trying to support at each level where companies are and provide them the information and tools that they necessary to try to move their efforts forward. You'll see that the deadline for the survey is Friday, September 16th. So there's still plenty of time to complete. Again, especially for companies just starting out, you shouldn't view this as a challenge that's not capable that you're not capable of tackling without a large team. There's a number of questions that just speak to the basic level of the actions that you've taken to start things out, and so we want to know that as well. So don't feel that you can only respond after you have a completely built out program. This is really intended to understand where you are. Throughout the survey, you'll see links are available to supporting information, and so, for example, around the resolutions, if you want to get some additional information from CGF, you can just click on the link within the survey, and that'll open up a new window, and you'll have that information at your fingertips, and then you can just navigate back to the survey to move through the questions. So again, the survey is set up to understand progress that you've made around the resolutions, both from program development, are there policies and targets supporting those efforts, and then are there specific KPIs or outcomes that you're measuring that CGF can roll up overall. And then following the analysis of the resolutions, we're looking at the commitments, in particular for Commitment A and Commitment B that are due in 2016, some very specific questions trying to understand the level of implementation so far. And if you haven't implemented, what are the challenges that you're facing? And again, you'll see that there's further links to additional information around the commitments, and around, we this year provided specific examples from the membership on how they've tackled either the resolutions and the commitments. So there's significant amount of information available just within the context of the questionnaire that help you navigate through and complete the response. Okay. Perhaps the most important is the health and wellness toolkit, and so this toolkit is available to the membership, and it's linked throughout the questionnaire. Different pieces of it, as well as the entire toolkit, are available just by looking at or just by clicking through on these links, and there's significant information around each of the resolutions, each of the commitments that you can access to help you understand how to respond and how to really get started if you're in a position where you're just starting out with respect to health and wellness. We do have a non-disclosure declaration that's required for everyone that's responding. Again, none of the information that you share as part of this questionnaire will be made public. We will roll up the results as CGF as an overall organization, but no specific information about MD companies will be shared. And so we ask at the end of the process that you agree to the non-disclosure declaration, and you can access it here, and then at the end of the survey you'll be asked to agree to it before submitting your information. So initially there's just some basic information about the companies. We need your name and your email address so that we can send the completed response back to you, so that you have it for your records and so that we know who's responded. Question 4, this is an important question for essentially customizing the survey to the type of company that you are. So there's different questions that apply to retailers, food and beverage manufacturers, personal care product manufacturers, and service providers. So depending on how you answer question 4, the set of questions that follow it will be determined by that. And so so that you don't have to answer questions that aren't applicable to your company. So we started out here saying, as a service provider, as an example, you provide the information around the time period around which you're reporting, where your company is headquartered, as we discussed, and then the new to this year around the regionalization strategy that we were just talking about. We're trying to understand what percentage of your revenue comes from each of these regions, regardless of where you're headquartered, so that we understand, or so we can roll up some of the numbers at the regional level when this process is done. And then question 9 is around understanding how representative your response is of your overall company. So for example, if you have health and wellness initiatives in just one of your regions, and you're responding to the survey based on those, based on the activities in that one region, we just want to understand what percent of that, of your overall revenue and your overall employee base, the question or the responses to the questionnaire represent. So once we've navigated through these, we get to the heart of the questionnaire itself. And I just want to demonstrate here that you can see, because this was a service provider, the resolutions around access to products that support healthy lifestyles and around product information aren't applicable. It's only around, for a service provider, only communication, educational programs, health and wellness initiatives for employees. That's the only resolution and commitment that's applicable, and so the rest of the survey is or you're not asked to respond to the rest of the survey based on that initial response to that first question. So I just want to go back now and change it so that you can see more of the content in the survey itself. So now, for a food and beverage manufacturer, of course, you're going to see resolution 1, and you're asked, have you taken action against that resolution? And then you'll see a definition of key terms that are being asked, as well as specific links to specific company examples so that you can see what others have done and how others are thinking about initiating programs in this case. And then depending on your response to that initial question, so in this case you said yes, so then you're asked, are there targets associated with the programs that you've developed for Resolution 1? And if you were to answer yes there would be some follow-on questions about what those targets were, but if you answer no, then there's no follow-on. And then kind of the same structure around policies. You're asked if there's a policy. We have a definition here that you can refer to, as well as a number of examples from both retailers and manufacturers to understand how those companies have established policies with respect to Resolution 1. And if you were to answer yes, there would be some follow-up questions about whether the policy is public and what communication channels you're using to communicate that policy. If you were to answer no on policies, you'd move to the next tier. And again, so for Resolution 1, you move through programs, policies, KPIs and outcomes, and then you move on to the commitment. And in this case, this is around Commitment A. By 2016, companies make public policies on nutrition and product formulation. So if you were to answer no, again, then you're asked to some follow-up questions so that CGF can understand what the challenges are. If it's lack of financial resources, staff time, whatever you answer, then those challenges then lead to some follow-on questions. Do you plan to start implementing in 2016-17? If you do not plan to implement a commitment at all, then it's why don't you plan to take any action? Let me just go back. So that we can demonstrate one other. Targets and goals. Oops. Just wanted to show you one other function here. So some of the questions you'll see have a red star. If they do have a red star, that means you're required to answer them before you can move on. So in this case, you just add some text there so that we can move on. You work through Resolution 1 and then you get to Resolution 2, and it's the same idea. You'll answer questions on programs, policies, and then KPIs. And there's similar structure around each of the 3 resolutions and the 4 commitments. And I just want to take us through it. So in this case, this is around Commitment D, around marketing to children, and so there's a number of questions that you're asked to provide specifics around the channels that that your policy governs, what's your compliance rate, for example, whether or not it's been externally audited. And in each case, there's links to company examples and further information that you can turn to. I'm just now going to navigate through to the end of the survey so you can see just what happened, what you need to do at the very end. So there's one final question. If you're interested in engaging further on these topics, there's a number of opportunities, and depending on the channel that or work stream you're interested in supporting, you get some follow-up from CGF around that. But then, again, at the end you're asked to agree to the NDA, and you won't be able to submit your response unless you do agree to the NDA. If you do, at that point, you've completed the survey. You'll get a copy of your response will be emailed to you automatically, as well as to our team. If you would then have an opportunity to review the PDF to make sure that you've answered the way that you intended, and if you have any changes that you need to make, just reach out to the team and we can make those changes. All right, so Lasma, if you want to return to
Right. Thank you very, very much, Blake, for walking us through the survey. And we'll have time for questions, of course, at the end. And I would say one big request that we have from the Consumer Goods Forum is really when you're going through the survey, the 2016 commitments, we really want to know how you're doing in terms of employee health and wellness and nutrition and product formulation, because these two commitments are coming to term at the end of this year. So it's really important for us that you share your data. In specifically, I would ask all of you on these sections, just let us know how you're doing, if you're how you're progressing, and what your future plans are. So to hear how some of our members are working through the survey and how they use it internally, we have Ahold and Unilever, so a retailer and a manufacturer, who are going to share with us their experience on how they are working through the survey and how they completed as a company. So Harmyan, if I can kick off with you at Ahold, if you can give us just a quick recap of how you're using the survey internally and how it works with your team.
Thank you, Sharon. What we do when the survey comes in, first of all, is we send out an email to the people that are involved in the health and wellness area to explain them that we need to answer the questions, but also that we would like to sit with them to see how much progress we are making. So it's not only that we use the survey just to complete all the answers and to get all the data, but we also use the survey to look a couple of years ahead and also to look a couple of years back. So what are we doing? Are we on track? Are we still focusing on the right topics? And how we do that is that the email that we send out is not coming from myself, but is mainly coming from my direct report, who is within the Ahold group, but we share the email with our operating companies in the Czech Republic, in the US, in the Netherlands, to explain them what we are doing, that this is coming, and that we will reach out to them to have some calls or meetings. And then during the meetings which we have, we just go through the questions. So it's not really focusing on the survey, it's more an update. And that really helps us in getting more insight in what our operating companies are doing, how much products we are reformulating, but also what is difficult, what is easy, which product categories are more easy than others. For example, if you look at sugar, there is also a resolution which focusing on marketing to children. So should we focus first on reformulating the products which we focus on children or not? So it's broader than only this. And that also gives the opportunity to for the people we talk to ask questions to us, so we can explain why we do this, that it's a broader picture, that we would like to show also that our industry is doing well. And that really helps. Then some practical things. What I do is I use always single points of contact in the operating company, so I don't go to all the people myself, but I really try to get ownership in the opcos to really let them also talk with others in the company about the survey, about the things we are doing. Another thing what we do is we don't only use the data for the survey, but we also use it for our annual report, for example, or for press releases, or for storytelling on our website, also to make it a bit broader. And then last but not least, what we do is we have an engaged CEO, so we also use our CEO sometimes to talk about the Consumer Goods Forum in town hall meetings or in speeches he is giving or in other meetings where we are. So that not only the message is coming from us, but it's also coming from the top of the organization, which also helps as well to get people engaged and to get them fill in the survey. Then the survey itself, we collect all the data. I complete the survey myself, put it in the system. I think it really helps that we now have an easy-to-use system. The questions are clear. I think the information boxes that are added are giving a lot of clarity as well. That is something we did for the first time this year. So altogether, that is how we do it, how we approach it. And then, of course, when the report comes out, we share it again, and we use that as well again to talk to the people, to show this is what we've done, this is why we've done it. Big Boer our CEO went to Cape Town last month, where we could also brief him again. So we try to use several moments in the year to let the survey come back, not only when completing, but also when it is already completed, and when we can share successes with the people that are helping us.
Super, thank you, Harm-Jan. And if anybody is interested in connecting with Harm-Jan and their methodology and how they do it, and emailing the team and getting the CEO support and what he's just explained, just contact us at CGF and we'll make the connections. So now Mary from Unilever. Mary's a member of our working group on measurement and reporting, and Mary, we'd love to hear your experience on measurement and reporting at Unilever.
Sharon, I think you can hear me now. Thank you for the introduction.
Hi, Mary. Thank you.
And hello everyone. I just probably reiterate some of what Petra has already said and Harm-Jan. Why do we do this survey in Unilever? And I think it's part of what Petra referred to, that we want to be part of a positive message from the industry, which is backed up by real concrete actions. We know that there's a lot of criticism, scrutiny and pressure on big industry, and sometimes if you're reading between the lines, or not even, on the news, it seems that we're just there for making profit at the expense of consumers' health and well-being. Of course, this is not representative of where we are, but it is a view that is out there, so we need to be able to counteract that. As Unilever, we do a lot of reporting. We do our own annual review and accounts where we talk about our sustainable living and health and well-being actions, and we do a lot of other activities as well. However, we also believe that we need to contribute to this industry report as well. It's not just enough for single companies to talk about their own activities. We want to be able to promote the positive message of the positive actions that the industry is taking. Why that is, well, we want to be part of the solution. We know that to drive real consumer behaviour change, multi-stakeholder action is required, and that includes involving the industry. And if the industry is not giving a positive story, then we begin to see even some of our own actions can be more difficult to achieve. So there's a big motivation behind our participation in the CGF survey, and this year in particular we've seen a lot of messaging floating around from also other groups. From AIM in Europe, for instance, we got the message who's doing the survey, who's making sure that we're inputting into the CGF survey. So there's a lot of interest from also very high level in the company that we need to be participating in this cross-industry reporting. And it's important that we come up with real facts and figures, and that the report that we produce every year is based on data. It's not enough just to have resolutions anymore. We need to be able to prove that we are taking action. So that's one of the major motivations for us to be participating. In terms of practical considerations, I back up a lot of what Harm-Jan has been saying about getting input from a number of people across the company, because we respond on quite a number of questions that not one person is going to be able to have the full story in place. So I think it's really handy early on to scan through the survey quickly. I find getting the Word document of it is also helpful. It's an easy scan way. And then we can identify who in the company can help to answer a question, a particular question that might not be within our own remit of expertise. I thought it was also important that we get the NDA document early, so that it can go to the right person in the company to have a look at it, to make sure that it's in line with any expectations, because that can sometimes be can be a blocker if that just happens at the end. And how we use the survey, well, we use it as a platform, like Petra said, to demonstrate the positive actions that we're doing. And it's really important for people out in the networks, it might not be in the global teams, to see that their activities are also contributing to this industry report. So we let them know that we're participating and that we need their input. But also when the report comes out, we share it around a number of the different networks within our company to say, we're part of this report, and isn't this a good way to us see what other companies are doing, or how we even can benchmark ourselves against what the industry response has been. So we use it quite a lot during the year. As I said, we do a lot of reporting, so we also just sometimes use the same material. So it's already been written up in another report. We're easily able to bring it into this one from the Consumer Goods Forum, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. I think that was what I wanted to say, Sharon. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or now or after the call.
Super. Thank you very, very much, Mary and Harmyan. And again, please, they're working through the survey as you all are. So there's absolutely, we're very happy to connect everyone at the end of the webinar. If you come across questions when you're working through the survey, just let us know, and we'll connect you with Harmyan and Mary, and I'm sure they've come across it in their own experiences in their companies, and we can help each other out. So we just wanted to take a final outlook on the report for 2016, and Petra will lead us through that. Petra.
Yes, thank you, Sharon, and thank you also for everybody that has been guiding us through. I hope you have seen how really easy it is made now. I think the survey now over the last 2 years has become extremely user-friendly to fill in. I think you hopefully could also build on Harmyan's and Mary's experience from their companies when it comes to also kind of ensuring that the data quality and collaborating with your colleagues to really have access to the appropriate and relevant information. And lastly, I believe also that I just wanted to reiterate that we on purpose worked very hard to launch this survey during the board meeting in South Africa in June. And our co-sponsors, my CEO at Nestle, Mr. Bulke, and the CEO of Ahold, Mr. Dick Boer, they basically personally announced that the survey was launched, and they got engagement from all the CEOs. So I think that should really inspire and motivate every single company to do so. And I also would like to reiterate that this is not an exercise for food manufacturers or retailers. This is a survey which is really beautifully designed to ensure that non-food manufacturers and retailers or service providers have also a very tailored report to complete. I just wanted to reiterate that because I think it's very important for the outside world that we can share a very broad perspective, which is not just limited to the food world of things. So having said that, the starting date was there, and now we have still time, which allows companies really to plan and organize until September 16th. So September 16th is the date when we would like to have all your completed surveys, and be assured that whatever you can complete in the survey is welcome. If you have difficulties in going to the latest level of detail, that is okay. I mean, you can seek support, as Sharon and Harmyan and Blake were actually suggesting, but it's also okay if there is data that you can't get your hands on as pending data. We need a starting point at somewhere. So important is that we get all answers in September to ensure that we have sufficient time to do a very thorough analysis of our data, because this data will be then crafted in a report that we do on an annual level, and that is very important because people are really expecting from us to show the year-on-year evolution of our efforts. So the report will capture the main outcomes, and we hope that we can have very powerful outcome from our commitments that are due by the end of the year from hopefully 100% of our membership companies. As the report is due in January, we need to really kind of have time to analyze and build the storyline behind it. Besides the survey results, we always use the report as well to tell the stronger or a more complete holistic story around health and wellness for the CGF and the collective efforts of the industry. And as such, we will also report on the advances and what the context of our measurements is. And the new aspect this year is actually that we will be also working on a meta-reality matrix. This should strengthen the report in the sense that it does not only give an inside-looking view, but it will also help us to even get the external perspective and what external KOLs and stakeholders consider as important for our industry, and we can build and show how we actually deliver against these expectations. So that is something that we are quite excited about. If you would like to contribute to this and to the working group, you are very welcome to join our working group, and actually just send a note to Sharon and she will be happy to link you into our working group. What are we using this report for? I mean, as said, it's a year-on-year demonstration of progress of the positive actions that we have as an industry. And I think it's very important to consider that we can show this collectively versus individual efforts, and that we can do this as a joint effort between manufacturers, retailers, small, big companies, food and non-food companies. This is very unique, and as such creates more and more appreciation. So, and as we get more appreciation, we I think should also show that more and more companies actually engage in the efforts to report. Eventually, why is this important as well? Is that we want to really build our stakeholder engagement. Mary has been beautifully summarizing what we are facing with the external pressures and scrutiny, and therefore it is very important that we use our positive progress to share and engage stakeholders. This happens at global level through the co-sponsors of the health and wellness pillar. It also happens now more and more at regional level. You are probably aware that we have started in Latin America with a regional CGF, and they will also be able to use our data for their regional stakeholder engagement. So it actually builds an even stronger offer. So I hope that you all make the effort to contribute with whatever you can in that survey. I think there is a fantastic support system set up now through the CGF Secretariat and also through Deloitte, who kindly really is providing this and building that survey year on year. So we really should also value and reward their efforts by actually filling in the reports from every member company. So I thank you in advance, and any questions I think we're going to take now, right, Sharon?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Petra. And I'll just make two other points in terms of the user friendliness that Petra mentioned. We also, if you participated in the survey last year, we have the possibility of pre-filling in all of those relevant questions that haven't changed. So this might help you to get started, or if the contact in your company has changed, who filled in the survey last year, know that we do have pre-filled in surveys. So just reach out to me and we will send you your copy of that. And another offer that we have, and we'd be very happy to do this for you, is if you want to see how you're doing, how you're comparing, or you want to benchmark yourself compared to the other members of the Consumer Goods Forum, this is something, once we have recuperated all of the results, we can send you a private benchmark so you can see where you situate your company in terms of progress against other members of the Consumer Goods Forum. And that is something, just drop us an email and we'll make sure that we send you that overview. So we just have a couple of minutes left. So please do raise your hand or ask a question or send send me an email if you have something that you would like to ask any of today's presenters. So I have a question that's come in by email. I think Petra, Harmjan, or Mary, any of you can answer this. It's how do you use the CGF reporting alongside your own company reporting?
Yes, Sharon, I think, this is Harmjan speaking, I think I can answer that. So what we do is we report to multiple questionnaires. It's the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, it's the our annual sustainability report, it is the Health and Wellness Survey. We get more and more questions from our investors on these kind of topics, for example, reformulation of products, or how do you deal with the rising obesity rates in the countries where we operate. So what we try to do is we combine all these questionnaires into one big overview, and we look at where we have overlap in these questionnaires. So if we get an answer, for example, on the numbers of products we reformulate, we can use it multiple times. So we don't need to go back all the time to all the people. The only thing we need to do is to make sure that we update these kind of overviews, well, biannually, or sometimes we do it annually. That's depending on the progress we are making and depending on the questions. And as almost all of these requests are in June or July, at least for the benchmarks, I am very happy that the launch is now a little bit earlier as well, so it's all coming together. I can also imagine that for some people it's a lot of work to do them all together, but we really try to combine it, and to so we only have to go to the people once, and we can use the answers multiple times.
Great, thank you. I have another. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sharon, probably just to add and build on what Harmjan was saying, and also to encourage companies, I think it's something which putting in place a overall reporting effort or system is very helpful. Because, as Harmjan touched upon a little bit, I think there are communication is an extremely important way of actually kind of sharing your company's success stories, etc. And to do so, the more you can build, of course, on your data, the better it is. Hence, to just build on Harmjan's point, we, for example, at Nestle, have a whole range of KPIs that we also measure centrally for our global company, and they can be used indeed for the different purposes, such as reporting for CGF, but as well for our internal reporting. So it's a very consistent message. And as such, you know, this all builds up from individual to collective. And this can be a story that can be told by an employee equally as it is told also by our CEO, that reinforces the efforts that we make in demonstrating the contributions that we are making on the health and wellness agenda.
Great, thank you. I have another question. It's some advice. In a small company, how should we agree on which department reports on health and wellness, presuming that the company doesn't have a specific department working on health and wellness? Any advice for a smaller company?
Yeah, and it's just an advice, because I work at a very big company, but what we are doing, we are using the finance department a lot to help us in collecting data, and one very big benefit of that is that they are used to reporting already, because they report the financial numbers, so they know what kind of pitfalls there are. They are very keen on definitions, on standardized data, to make sure that data is comparable so they can analyze it. So we work a lot with the finance department because of their experience already in reporting with in other areas of the company.
to probably add a little bit on this, and again, it's only a piece of experience that I can share rather than making strong recommendations, because every company has its own setup in its own rights. I think what is important is probably also to start conceptually in terms of what for the company that you work for is important as a KPI. I think we have, as a CGF, set out resolutions and commitments that probably capture very largely objectives for individual companies, and you need to understand from your individual company how they actually translate into measures in your own company. Once you have these measures, then you indeed want to understand what is the data that you require to report on them and who owns this data. It could be finance, it could be somebody else. Sometimes it could be even your IT department that actually needs to enable that you even can track certain data. That is an effort. We have to acknowledge that that is effort to track, but it is really worth the investment, because only then you get the learnings and what you are basically doing as a company and improve your own company contributions, and it's extremely helpful for an internal process as well. So I basically would conclude in saying you may need a cross-functional team to agree on what you would like to start reporting on, and then allocate the respective functions that are closest to what you require in terms of the data that you want to measure and consequently to report.
Thank you. And I'll give one mention. We do have a very short, nice video that we have created if you're looking to motivate your colleagues internally to work with you on the survey. There's a 3-minute video on YouTube that we can share with you, which will help you to communicate the survey internally. And I've just time for a final question. How can multiple people in one company work on the survey? What's the best way to proceed? So there is a function at the top of the survey where you can save and share the survey itself, and you'll get a dedicated link which you can then forward on to a colleague in another department, in human resources, for example, or in your R&D, if they are going to reply to a specific part of the survey. So you will have a unique link, and I'll send you more detailed explanations directly by email after the survey, just on that functionality. It's an easy way, and most companies actually have more than one person working on the survey itself. So we have also the Word version, which might help you as well when you're multiple teams working on the survey, which we can send to you. So we've run out of time. So if there are other questions, just send them by email, and we'll reply directly to you. And just to reiterate what all of our speakers have said today is, please do fill in the survey. Really help us to tell your positive story. There's so much that's happening with CGF member companies. We really need to be empowered by you to tell that positive story. So thank you very, very much in advance for your data, for what you can share with us, whether you're implementing now or in the future, the commitments we would really like to know. So on behalf of all of our speakers today and everyone who's joined, huge thank you, and we're here to help you in any way we can. So thank you very, very much, everybody.